Testing. 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 What's up, guys? It's the Dorn, not Keebly here. Today we're going to be playing some Minecraft, so. We already played Minecraft today, but we're playing it again. Dorn Keebler in it. 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 You think you're the Dorn Whisperer? Get the fuck out of here. Okay? Think you can whisper to the Dorn? Dorn blurts loud. You understand? Dorn Keebler in it here. We're just waiting now. Let's get down to business. We got some stuff to do here. Let's see here. Just gonna explore the rest of this dungeon. Okay, I already went in here. That's why there's already torches in here. Thing is, even people who know me personally don't really know the Doorknob Keebler, you know? They know the part that plays their friend, you know? You can be happy with what you have. That's your option. You understand? Jesus. That's close. Be happy with what you have, and that's the option that you get. When I say don't invest in the Dornock Healer, it's because what I mean is that the Dornock Healer is not over-invested in you, you understand? Dornock Healer can just let things go, you understand? What the Dornock Healer can live without, you know, does not concern himself with, you understand? There's a lot of things that the Dornock Healer can live without. You understand? There's more things than the Dornock Healer can live without than there is things that the Dornock Healer can live with. You know? Like, none of these are good. Pretty much. Oop. Not even mending, really. You know. I'm sure you'll try to talk to the Dornock Healer. You know? Try to get down on a level with the Dornock Healer. And, you know, we will just see how that goes. You know? It won't go terrible, you know? You might just be a little disappointed, you know, with what you get, you know? Might just be a little disappointed with what you get when you can't accept things for the way that they are, you know? What? Oh. Oh, jeez. really need to take less excess damage. Some people like to pretend like, you know, like they are there, you know, with the Dorn. They're on the same level as the Dorn, and that's what they like to pretend, but you know, the truth is that they aren't, you know. Truth is that they aren't. You know. You know, I almost wish I could say it burdens me to see, you know, somebody try and fail and be disappointed, but, you know, it actually makes me very happy, you know? Because Adorno Keebler hates to be misunderstood, you know what I'm saying? You know? Misunderstood to a degree where you feel like you have any sort of agency in this situation or power in this situation. You have any sort of input in this situation, you know? What? You said this. Oh. Jordan Keebler would like to see you corrected, you know? Jordan Keebler, I guess, you know, would like you to understand your place in all this, you know? In the most, you know, obviously, you know, Jordan Keebler speaks very objectively, you know? Jordan Keebler speaks very objectively. Because, to some degree, you know, the Dorn views pretty much, you know, the entire world as an outside force compared to how things go on the inside, you know. And the outside world, you know, feels to the Dorn, not Keebler, like it wants to cross boundaries. Dorn Keebler doesn't really do that, you know. Doesn't have anything, you know. Doesn't really have anything where that would work. So, you know. Dorn Keebler doesn't really do crossing of boundaries, you know. That's the thing about a lot of people in this world, you know, they have a hero complex, you know. It's unfortunate, you know. But, you know, this is my narrative, you know. I dictate the narrative of the dorm, you know. I mean, sometimes it's fun when people follow along, but, you know. Dorn is also okay if people decide to detour kind of in their own direction with things, you know. Doesn't really matter to the Dorn very much, we'll say. You know. You know. It's just not, you know, it just gets to a point where the Dorn doesn't really recognize what, you know, doesn't really recognize that as an aspect of the Dorn healer. You know what I mean? Which, you know, can be a little disappointing sometimes, you know, for some. You know, and that's your, you know, that's your right to feel that way, you know, of course. Dorn doesn't really work on, you know, work on things with other people. Dorn does that by himself. You understand? I mean, you know, people have boundaries for a reason. You know, but it's not like a trust thing that really like needs to like be different. You know, that's been this way for so long and now it needs to be different. That's, you know, it is what it is. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's going to stay the way it is, you know, until Dornar Keebler is ready for things to change, you know. You know, the thing about people's minds is that they work differently, you know, the way that they handle things, you know, the way that the whole system works, you know what I mean? You know, Dornar Keebler is a single player experience, you understand? You know, even, you know, even when other people are involved, you know, the Dornar Keebler is a pretty single player experience, you know. I think I'm running out of space here. Might need another bundle, to be honest. I mean, this is like totally my thing, you know what I mean? Like, this is the Dornar Keebler's area. This is the Dorn's world, and the Dorn's world, things go how the Dorn declares them to. You know, And had I wanted things to go differently, I would have done them differently. Understand? Dorn Keeler has free will. You know, I'm my own person of equal value to everybody else in the world. You know, not everybody may believe that, but you know, that's just a perspective. You know, and that's the thing about the difference between perspective and opinion. You know, one isn't reality, and the other is. You know. In most cases, you know, you can have a pretty accurate view of reality sometimes, but, you know, it's important to understand the difference between those two things, you know. Like the dorn Keebler, for example, is not a real thing, you know. Dorn Keebler isn't real, you know. It's a character to some extent, you know. Yeah. You know, that doesn't mean that dorn Keebler doesn't take inspirations from, you know, from himself, but, you know, it's just not the same in real life, you know. Chronocaler is a part in the system of parts made for journaling and processing, you know. Trying to think of a decent analogy for this, you know. Because at the end of the day, it's not gonna come out like you want it to, you know. And, you know, you might get frustrated, you know. You know, that's why, you know, that's why we are responsible for ourselves, you know, as, you know, as individuals in the world, you know. Yeah. Like, not everything is my responsibility, for example, you know. There's things I don't have to worry about, and so I don't worry about them because they're not really my problem, not my responsibility, you know. Yeah. I don't feel entitled to handle those things because, you know, to some degree, you know, I have a lack of information about the situation sometimes, you know. Yeah. Like, my mind can kind of create, you know, this false idea sometimes before I really go into a situation, you know. And so I'll try to deal with it, based off of that false idea I have, of how things work. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's not with everything, but, these are things that I've just learned throughout my life, At this point, I would say I have it more figured out than not having it figured out, The way things work and how much, how much control I have in certain situations, Over something I feel like over something I disagree with, or over something that doesn't fit my narrative, I understand that to some extent there's just nothing I can do in that certain area, so I just keep calm and carry on, Getting wrapped up with another bundle here. I have an inventory full of bundles after this. But it's important not to feel too entitled to somebody else's situation, That's an important thing about life, There's no way this bag is... Okay, good. It's not full. I feel like I would rather have potions of regeneration, but that one only lasts for about 22 seconds. I don't have any amethyst on me, so I can't make another potion bundle. Or alchemy bag, I mean. So... Like what? Am I just gonna have to leave it there? I don't know, really. Guess so, right? Take the flint, though, for arrows. Where's that other bag of wood? There it is. Now, a lot of people who say stuff like that, a lot of people who say, like, oh, you shouldn't feel too entitled to somebody else's situation, they will actually, get upset when, when something like that is said to them. Like, I had this experience a lot in treatment, actually, with my treatment buddies. Like, a lot of people in there would be like, like, everybody here is on their own path, I'd be like, oh, okay, I kind of understand that, sometimes, when we're being vulnerable and talking about things in group therapy, we do a lot of that there, and, like, I would see, in certain situations, like, if somebody, commented on, something in a way that was, like, more so, telling me how I should have handled something, like, then I'd be like, oh, well, it turned out alright anyways, like, it was kind of clear that, if I would have said, you know, the same thing, you know, it would have been kind of a different reaction than I had, which was pretty much just, oh, okay, you know, I'm willing to respect that, you know. But I get it though, you know, everybody has, you know, their own view of the way the world should work, and you know, and that's, you know, in your world is free to work as, you know, however you want it to, you know what I mean? I think I might need another bundle here, but I might not even have enough space. God damn it, am I drowning right now? Oh, yeah. Really running out of space here. Put this in here, and we can make a new bundle. It's like we pretty much entirely ran out of space here. So we might have to go back up to the base here. Like this, it's the nether one, yeah. Like, I'll speak broadly about how, you know, I think transgenderism, I don't think it's a good thing, but, you know, like, talking to specifically, like, a transgender, like, you know, like, I don't think I would tell a person who's transgender, like, specifically what aspects of their life I think they need to change, you know? And I don't think I would tell them, you know, and I don't think, you know, I would tell them who they are depending on, you know, how soon they're willing to change those things, you know, like, 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 you know, I wouldn't give them it like any sort of like, you know, deadline, you know. Like, because, you know, I'm not really entitled to speak on, you know, somebody else's life past a certain point, you know. Like outside of like a broader scale of speaking, you know. It's just crazy that things like this in the big 2026, they aren't really common sense anymore, you know. You know, obviously, you know, that it's kind of fallen, you know, that knowledge has kind of fallen out of favor, you know, kind of fallen out of popularity, I guess. Dang it. Dang it, again? This is so not good. We're definitely gonna need to make a run back up to the base here. Don't really have any obsidian or anything. That's the funk I'm in here. Put 2 torches by this one to let myself know that I haven't opened that one up yet. Might just be a little bit difficult to figure out which way I need to go to get back here. Yeah. But yeah, Dorn knows his value. Actually, very well knows his value as a person, you know. And, you know, Dorn knows what he, you know, like, knows, you know, his right to be free. He understands it pretty well, you know. So, you know, that's not a confusing thing for the Dorn you know. Dorn knows that he, you know, like, doesn't really matter what the situation is, you know. In the majority of circumstances, Dorn is still a completely valuable person, equal to everybody else. You know, with just as much say in a conversation as anybody else. You know. I mean, we all have the equal right to free speech. You know, like pretty much, yeah, identically across everybody who has U.S. citizenship here. You know. Dorn doesn't really follow along with like imaginary things that aren't actually true. You know what I mean? So, you know, obviously, it's always important to know exactly what you're saying as you're saying it. You know, like before. Yeah, I mean, say it if you want, but you know, it's always important to know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, always important. Yeah. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Dorn Keeper might just chime in for a little bit of a correction, you know. Alrighty, let's see here. What I need, you know what I need? I need a lodestone. No, I need a waystone, so I need some obsidian. That's what I need, so... I do want to use some of these to make some carpets, because I really like cyan as a color. I feel like that would be just a nice little carpet to have right here, you know? Yeah. Yeah, we could use a little more of that, but, yeah. Though Dornot Keebler does not really care about bullshit, he's still super receptive to it, you know? Dornot Keebler understands bullshit when he hears it, you know what I mean? Oh, this is a vanilla one, so it doesn't work the same. Awesome. So there's a lot of food in here. It's good. It's important to keep a lot of food in this game because you get hungry. So, really, I think it's time to go underground. Can't really get rid of that compass because that's you know, it's links up with my nether thing. I don't know where the compass is that leads home. I would have to make a new compass, I think. Let me see. I know I had some redstone somewhere. Guess not. So now what we can do actually is take a bunch of these sticks, take some of this wood, do a little bit of this action. Whoops. Okay. Take some of these, do a little bit like this. So now we have a good amount of ladders here. I mean, as for what the Dorn Keebler is required to do, he knows very well about what he's required to do. 2, 3, 4. God, we need some torches up in here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We only have 60 ladders. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. Oh, it landed in a cave. And there's a spawner right there, so that's pretty cool. Can't believe this is 8,000 durability. Oh, it doesn't stop at vanilla numbers, so it'll just continue to upgrade. That's good. That is very good. As far as I'm concerned, because I know there's no actual Unbreaking 4 in the game. Looks like they can all upgrade a little more. Okay, so okay, we have 21. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Where the hell did my torches just go? I thought I had a ton of them. Guess. Oh, you know what? Did use all my sticks for ladders. I could have made these all into iron ladders, but that would have been pretty expensive. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's a little more than 13. Great. And I have enough ladders to get up now. This could be a conundrum. Although we did find a decent cave, I hope, so what we really need to find is some lava. This might just be an ass cave, to be honest. We might just have to dig in a straight line for a while. This is a... Oh, look at this. It goes upwards. But we've just barely broken through stone layer, so... I really have no wood. Oh, I have a little bit. Sweet. And a lot of people, their whole narrative is about being a good person. Dorn Keebler doesn't really care about being a good person, like, at all. You know what I mean? That's not something that really bothers the Dorn Keebler very much, you know? The idea of, like, not being a good person, it just doesn't really bother Dorn Keebler very much, you know? You know, doesn't mean the Dorn Keebler goes out of his way to be a bad person, but, you know, means that, you know, where other people, you know, they might consider the common courtesy of the situation, that's not even a thought that crosses the Dorn Keebler's mind, you know? But, you know, Dorn Keebler recognizes that, you know, other people, they kind of have a detection for that way of thinking, and they get frustrated, you know, when somebody doesn't think the way, you know, somebody doesn't think the thoughts that they would have thought themselves, you know. Dorn Keebler feels that frustration with other kinds of thoughts, but, you know, it's just part of, you know, it's just part of being human, you know. It's, you know, not agreeing with somebody sometimes. That's just something that happens, you know. That's completely normal. You know, not agreeing with somebody sometimes. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, you know. So much gravel right here. Really should be digging this 3 blocks tall because, you know, you could be missing out on a ton of ore. What am I collecting and where's it going? Because I don't have a backpack. None of these have pockets in them. So what's the deal here? Could have just been collecting into my bundle. We're not looking for diamonds, we're just looking for a cave here. Gotta remember, you know, like, you know, you're not obligated to, you know, to bend over backwards for somebody, you know. But that's kind of how we make it seem these days, is that you should feel obligated to bend over backwards for people sometimes, you know. I don't really agree with that narrative, you know. Because what if I don't? Then what happens? You're nasty, is what happens, you know. And it's this whole good and bad person narrative. It's just ridiculous, you know? It's this whole karma narrative, you know, but, you know. I mean, it's all up there with manifestation and all sorts of other spiritual beliefs, you know. I mean, you want to know the number one reason why the Dorn Keebler doesn't desire any sort of romantic relationships? You know, because that involves taking care of another person to some extent. Not entirely, but to some extent, you know? Like, what if somebody wants you to be their shoulder to cry on? You know? I don't really want to do that. You know? I don't really care to do that. You know? I mean, I'll listen to somebody's problems a little bit, you know, but to really be there for somebody, it's a different story, you know. You know. In a romantic relationship, you don't always have to go above and beyond for somebody, but there are moments where you are kind of expected to do that. And, you know, to me, that sounds like a total drag, you know? You know, I don't desire the things that other people desire. Like, I don't, you know, though I have felt the negative feelings that come with loneliness before, you know, these days, I don't really feel that at all. Like, you know, there's not a part of me that wishes my situation was even a little bit different, to be honest. You know, like, I have a place I can be as I am, you know, with all my struggles, you know, I have a place I can be, you know, and just kind of go through my daily cycle of life, you know. I'm, you know, experiencing kind of my own version of homeostasis right now, you know, just in the situation I'm in, you know. Things could change, but, you know, for the most part, there's some fundamental aspects of my situation here that keep me satisfied. I hear an amethyst geode. Maybe it was this way. Another thing, you know, I don't really look at women and think they're beautiful, you know, or, I don't really have that feeling, you know. Though once again, it was a feeling that it's not like I've never felt it before, but it's not something that I feel anymore, you know. And a lot of people probably like, they'll have their own kind of opinions about that, but you know, it's I'm telling you from a personal feeling perspective, from my perspective, what I experience on a day-to-day basis, that is not what I feel, you know. And I really don't care if you agree or disagree with that, you know. It affects me very little, if at all, you know. Dorn Keeler is fully ace, you know. And that's not just something I say, you know. That's how I feel, you know. That's how I am, you know. Digging down because I'm kind of hoping this cave is going to be down, not up. Is this upgraded again? Holy shit. Looks like we lost the skeleton. It must be either above me or forward. What? Diamonds? At Y negative 30. Well, that makes sense. You know. I'm just sick of people, telling me their, giving me their perspective on my life. I think I'm done having that be a thing that matters. Other people's opinion in my life, on my life, having to do with me. I don't really care about that anymore, you know? I think I'm just going to keep doing things as the way I'm doing them, and whether anybody likes it or not. How about that? Because I have the right, you know. Because I have the right, you know. I'm allowed to. So I'm I'm going to. You know what I mean? Because it is really it's my life that I'm living here. You know, my life intersects with other people's lives sometimes, but you know, for the most part, with me, it's, you know, I'm worried about my life. You get what I'm saying? And that's all I'm really worried about. You know. I don't even really feel entitled to speak on other people's lives, you know, because their life isn't my life. You know, we live two different lives. It's like, what, you know, like we're two different people who live two different lives, you know, and you know, we just kind of like, you know, like, I don't know, you know. You know, I see a lot of actual content creators talk about stuff like this, you know, where, you know, they talk about other people's lives and the way that they should be, and you know, like, get really opinionated about it, really entitled, you know, like, uh, yeah, that's not really how things go in the Dorn Keeler world, you know. We don't really do that. It might be above me, it might be below me. I'm gonna try below me first, because that's kind of obviously like that's what I'd be more psyched about, to be honest. Oh, it might be above me. Oh, that's so frustrating. Wait, no. It's above me. Just be careful, you know, like obviously, you know, in this world, just be careful what you say, you know, because, you know, don't, you know, you don't want to, you know, you don't want to, you know, say the wrong thing, you know. Maybe you do, you know. But Dorna Keebler, you know, I mean, he's always ready for these things, you know. He's experienced it multiple times in his life, you know. Dorna Keebler is over it, you know what I mean? doesn't really deal with that anymore, you know. And these caves are just fart after fart, dude. Shart after fart. It'll catch on. Trust me. Isn't it interesting the way I'm talking? I talk like just how other people talk. It's so, you know, like this is how other people talk. You know, it's this, you know, this is kind of the way that they talk. You know, about these types of things. You know, when they're being entitled. You know, it's interesting. You know, it's a lot of people do just really interesting things. You know. It's weird. It's weird, really. That's that's what Dornar Keebler sees. That's all he sees. Yeah. I mean, like the Dornar Keebler says, it's only a matter of time. Until we have that conversation, right? And then, you know, and then like, you know, Dornar Keebler decides whether or not he wants to continue engaging, with this, with all that, Dornar Keebler doesn't really engage with entitlement very much, Not something, it's something I realize I have to, like legally, I have a choice of, like, whether or not I want to engage with that entitlement, You know, being a U.S. citizen with U.S. rights and an innocent man. We can have this conversation. It won't be pleasant, but we can have this conversation. You know, until until the Dorna Killer is done having this conversation, and then we're done. And that's the end of it. You know. Because there's only so much you could do after a certain point, like and then I'm forced to kind of do some things, and that's never fun. That's not fun. That's not that's it's just not that doesn't work well for everybody. You know what I mean? We like it to work well for everybody. You know. What do I need an obsidian for again? Let me look up waystone. I don't think I have any ender pearls either. What I really need is just a little bit of obsidian. Okay, I need like 1 obsidian, so we can take one of those buckets. Oh, obsidian. That's a lot. That's that's what some people like to do, is they like to force hands, and they like to force other people's hand, in terms of what they really need to do about a situation, yeah, not a good practice, Damn, I need a furnace. Oh, we do have some more carpet. Sweet. having things be personal and fun for everybody, that's a luxury that we have, you know. That's a luxury that we have that we're able to sustain, you know. Because obviously we're all in this together, you know. You know. To an extent, I would say. We're all in this together to an extent, you know. God, we need to stop cooking this iron. This can just go back in here. Sweet. Oh, Jesus, that's kind of spooked me a little bit. I would say we're all in this together until we aren't anymore, you know? That's more like it. We're all in this together until we aren't anymore. Get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying. Did I fall in here? Wait, no, I don't have that potion of night vision on me anymore. Definitely didn't go over here. Could I have fallen through here? I mean, Dorna Keeler knows what you're probably like, what you probably think, and you know, like consider in your own mind, and you know, like your perspective and your opinion on things. Dorna Keeler doesn't really want to hear that, you know. Dorna Keeler doesn't really care about that. Doesn't really care to hear that. So you're gonna have to keep it to yourself, you know. That's how it's gonna have to be, you know. Sorry, not sorry, you know. You know, it's just how the situation is, anyways. You can frame me as the villain in the situation. That's something that a lot of people do. It's something you see happen, like um, just from one human being to another, and like a common pattern that's repeated. Like a predictable pattern almost. But you know, that's great for you. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. You know, I don't know. I don't really know what to say to that. That's just you know. Don't want to keep the turns and walks away. You know. See you later. Tornacular doesn't really engage with that. All in this together. You know what I'm saying? Good times. Look at that. Oh my god. Why didn't I think of that before? The vanilla bundles can go inside of the beans backpack bundles. Okay, that sounds kind of ridiculous. Okay, but if you're playing this game, you know what I'm talking about. Hmm. Guess I'd kind of like to make a deep slate brick waystone. Alright. Oh, we need one emerald. Just one. Just one. We need just one. We need just one. See if I did this right. Boom, baby. We'll call this Island Outpost. Oh, that's cool with like the red on there. I think there's a lot of people who really think that Dorna Keebler can be a really insufferable person. You know? Dorna Keebler doesn't want to have to be that way, but he will, you know? Because he doesn't care, you know? He will be that way. You know? Oh, we're so close, dude. Sweet guys. So that was another Dorn Keebler little action adventure here. So yeah, I will